The criminal in question was a mastermind, whose name became infamous worldwide. Known for their intelligence, cunning, and ability to stay one step ahead of law enforcement, they had an unmatched ability to hack into the world's most secure banking systems. This individual wasn't just a thief, they were a digital predator, using high-level technology and insider knowledge to pull off some of the most audacious heists in modern history. With no clear motive other than the thrill of the heist and an insatiable greed for wealth, they targeted global financial institutions, draining billions from banks across continents. As their crimes escalated, they became one of the most dangerous and elusive criminals the world had ever seen, leaving authorities scrambling to track them down. The legend of this criminal grew, with rumors and whispers circulating about their next big move, always remaining just out of reach until the inevitable hunt began. The criminals' journey into the world of crime began in their early years, long before they became a global menace. Raised in an environment where technology was rapidly evolving, they developed a fascination with computers and hacking at a young age. Initially, their skills were used for harmless pranks and small-time thefts, breaking into personal accounts and exposing flaws in security systems. However, as they grew older, their talent for bypassing digital locks and exploiting vulnerabilities caught the attention of a darker crowd. By the time they were in their 20s, they had honed their craft to an expert level, using their technical expertise to break into corporate systems and access confidential financial data. This was no longer about small-scale hacks. It was about infiltrating the core of global financial networks. They began to work with a network of hackers and insiders, growing their reputation and learning the art of high-profile heists. Their entry into the world of large-scale bank thefts was gradual but calculated, leveraging stolen information to siphon money from accounts without leaving a trace. The criminal had transformed from a curious hacker into a professional thief, and the world would soon realize the extent of their capabilities. The criminals' success wasn't just a result of their technical skills, but their innovative techniques that pushed the boundaries of conventional hacking. They didn't rely on simple brute force methods. Instead, they developed intricate strategies to bypass even the most sophisticated security systems. One of their most notable techniques involved exploiting vulnerabilities in the global bank's interbank network. By accessing the communication channels used by financial institutions to transfer funds internationally, they were able to manipulate transactions in real time, rerouting vast sums of money to untraceable accounts. This method was revolutionary, as it allowed them to steal millions without triggering any immediate alarms. The criminal also utilized advanced malware to infiltrate banking systems. The malware was designed to mimic legitimate transactions, making it nearly impossible for security systems to detect. It silently collected sensitive information, including login credentials and encryption keys, which were then used to bypass multi-layered security systems. This allowed the criminal to access bank vaults and financial reserves without leaving any digital fingerprints behind. Furthermore, they cleverly used insider information, exploiting relationships with corrupt bank employees who provided crucial access to restricted systems. By using a combination of social engineering and digital manipulation, the criminal could stay several steps ahead of authorities, making their activities nearly impossible to trace until it was too late. The criminals' audacious heists were not limited to one country or one bank. They targeted the most secure financial institutions across the globe, selecting high-profile banks with extensive international operations, knowing their vulnerabilities would provide the greatest reward. The scale of their thefts was staggering, often involving millions or even billions of dollars in stolen funds. In one of their most infamous heists, the criminal infiltrated a major European bank, exploiting a flaw in its wire transfer system. By subtly altering the details of high-value international transfers, they rerouted funds from various accounts to offshore banks. This operation was carried out over several weeks, with the criminal executing small, incremental transfers that flew under the radar of bank officials and automated detection systems. By the time the heist was discovered, the stolen sum amounted to hundreds of millions of dollars. In another bold attack, the criminal targeted a bank in Asia, gaining access to its vault network and systematically draining funds from high-security vaults. They used a combination of advanced encryption-breaking software and corrupt insiders to disable the bank's physical and digital security, allowing them to empty accounts without raising suspicion. The criminals' ability to make these thefts appear as routine transactions was their greatest asset. The sheer scale and complexity of their operations left financial institutions worldwide in shock and scrambling to understand how such a well-executed series of crimes could have been carried out without detection. The criminals' success was not achieved alone. They had built a vast, intricate network of accomplices, collaborators, and insiders who aided in executing these high-profile heists. This underground network was composed of skilled hackers, corrupt bank employees, and even powerful figures within the financial world who turned a blind eye to the criminals' activities in exchange for a share of the loot. At the core of this network were a group of expert hackers who specialized in coding, encryption breaking, and exploiting security flaws. These individuals worked behind the scenes, creating custom malware and digital tools that allowed the criminal to infiltrate even the most secure bank systems. They ensured that each heist was seamless, erasing all traces of the criminal's involvement. The criminal also recruited insiders within the banking industry, people who had access to sensitive financial systems and who were willing to risk everything for a substantial payout. These insiders provided critical information about the bank's internal operations, security measures, and vulnerabilities. Some even helped the criminal bypass authentication processes, ensuring that the digital trails were effectively covered. Moreover, the network expanded beyond just digital criminals. The criminal had built ties with money laundering rings and organized crime syndicates, who helped clean and distribute the stolen funds. These groups used their influence to move the money across borders, ensuring the funds were laundered and safe from the authorities' reach. Together, this complex web of criminals worked in perfect coordination, each playing their role to perfection, which made it nearly impossible for law enforcement to trace the origin of the stolen money or uncover the true extent of the criminals' operations. The authorities were initially caught off guard by the scale and sophistication of the criminals' operations. As the thefts grew in magnitude and frequency, law enforcement agencies across the world began to realize they were dealing with a criminal mastermind who had anticipated every move they might make. Local police forces were quickly overwhelmed by the complexity of the crimes, as the digital nature of the heists left no obvious physical evidence. International organizations like Interpol and Europol stepped in, forming a task force dedicated to tracking down the criminal. However, the criminals' ability to hide their digital footprints proved to be a significant challenge. Advanced encryption and decoy networks made it incredibly difficult to trace the stolen funds or locate the perpetrators behind the attacks. Despite these challenges, authorities employed various techniques to try and stop the criminal. They increased surveillance on global banking systems, implemented stricter cybersecurity measures, and began monitoring known underground hacker communities for any signs of the criminal's involvement. Cybersecurity firms were hired to assess vulnerabilities in banking infrastructure and strengthen defenses, but each time they thought they had closed one loophole, the criminal adapted and found a new path. The complexity and global nature of the crimes also created jurisdictional issues, with different countries investigating independently without full cooperation. This disjointed approach initially slowed progress. Despite all these efforts, the criminals' ability to stay one step ahead of authorities fueled their reputation, and the heists continued, leaving law enforcement agencies frustrated and scrambling for answers. As the scale of the criminals' heists grew, so did the intensity of the global manhunt. Law enforcement agencies realized that they were up against a highly skilled, elusive adversary who was not only a technical genius, but also a master of evasion. The criminals' ability to erase all traces of their digital footprint, combined with the vast network of accomplices who helped cover their tracks, made the task of apprehension seem nearly impossible. To combat this, authorities expanded their efforts, coordinating with international agencies and governments. Interpol, along with cybersecurity firms and private investigators, formed an unprecedented global task force. They pooled resources, shared intelligence, and began to monitor even the most obscure corners of the dark web where the criminal might hide. Some of the world's top hackers were enlisted to trace the criminal's digital movements, while financial institutions and banks were urged to implement more robust security measures. Despite the heightened efforts, the criminal continued to stay several steps ahead, adapting to new security protocols and exploiting fresh vulnerabilities faster than authorities could respond. However, with each new theft, they left behind subtle clues, small mistakes, or patterns that, over time, began to form a clearer picture. The hunt intensified further as the criminals' behavior became more predictable. They began to favor certain types of banks or digital systems, allowing law enforcement to narrow down possible locations. Increasingly desperate, the criminal resorted to using more risky techniques, such as leaving behind traces in their wake that authorities could latch onto. This shift, although dangerous for the criminal, gave investigators a glimmer of hope that they might finally be closing in. The tipping point came when the criminal made a critical error, one that would eventually lead to their downfall. After a series of successful heists, the criminal began to grow more brazen, perhaps believing they were invincible. In one particularly bold move, they attempted a major heist involving several high-profile banks across multiple countries in a single operation. However, in their rush to execute the plan, they overlooked an important detail. They failed to fully cover their digital tracks in one of the transactions. The mistake was seemingly minor, an encrypted file left behind in the system, which contained a unique identifier that could be traced back to a specific server location. This seemingly insignificant slip-up triggered an alert within a cybersecurity firm that was monitoring suspicious activity in financial systems. Upon further investigation, the digital breadcrumb trail led authorities to a hidden server, and with it, a break in the case. This server had been used as a relay point to disguise the origin of stolen funds, but it also contained vital data linking the criminal's network to previous heists. Investigators were able to use this new lead to track down the criminal's digital fingerprints, unraveling their network of accomplices. The mistake had revealed a small but critical vulnerability that authorities could exploit. As the investigation grew more focused, the criminal's once flawless operations began to unravel. With this new intelligence, law enforcement was able to track down key members of the criminal's network, leading to a series of arrests. As the pieces of the puzzle came together, the criminal found themselves cornered, no longer able to escape the relentless pursuit of the authorities. After an intense and coordinated global effort, the criminal was finally apprehended in a dramatic operation. The authorities, armed with critical evidence from the recent breakthrough, had closed in on the criminal's last known location, a hideout in a remote area far from the cities where they had previously operated. Working with local law enforcement and intelligence agencies, a specialized task force executed a carefully planned raid, arresting the criminal without a shot being fired. The arrest made headlines worldwide, as people marveled at how someone so elusive could be caught after years of high-profile heists. The criminal's identity, once shrouded in mystery, was revealed, and it became clear just how deeply they had embedded themselves in the world of international crime. The authorities seized an array of digital devices, servers, and documents that provided irrefutable proof of their involvement in the massive thefts. The trial that followed was a spectacle, attracting media attention from across the globe. The prosecution presented a damning case, showcasing the criminals' intricate plans and the extent of the financial damage caused by their actions. However, the criminals' defense team tried to argue that they were simply a product of their circumstances, a victim of a corrupt financial system, though this argument did little to sway the court. The trial unfolded with intense courtroom drama as the criminals' network of accomplices, including corrupt insiders and hacker associates, were also brought to justice. As the evidence mounted, it became clear that the criminal had not acted alone, but was part of a vast, coordinated operation that spanned continents. In the end, the criminal was convicted on multiple charges of cybercrime, money laundering, and grand theft. The sentence was severe, a long prison term, as well as restitution to the banks and governments that had been defrauded. The trial's outcome was seen as a major victory for international law enforcement, sending a powerful message that no one, no matter how skilled, was above the law. The case marked a turning point in global cybersecurity, leading to stronger regulations and a renewed focus on preventing such crimes in the future. The arrest and conviction of the criminal marked the end of one of the most daring and elaborate criminal careers in modern history. While were felt across the global banking industry, leaving a lasting impact on financial security and cybercrime prevention. The case served as a wake-up call to banks, governments, and private institutions who began to invest heavily in more advanced security measures, digital forensics, and international cooperation to prevent similar breaches in the future. The criminal's downfall was a testament to the persistence and dedication of law enforcement, as well as the power of global collaboration in the fight against cybercrime. Their capture also demonstrated that even the most sophisticated criminal minds can be outsmarted, given enough time and resources. However, the legacy of the criminals' network continued to haunt the world. Many of their accomplices remained at large, and the stolen funds were only partially recovered. The trial and the criminals' eventual conviction sent a strong message to the world. While the digital age brought new opportunities for criminals, it also created new tools for justice. The criminal's story became a cautionary tale, reminding everyone that no crime, no matter how high-tech or well-planned, is beyond the reach of those determined to uphold the law.